Hello and good Tuesday morning to you from Radically Rational and RadicallyRational.com. Man, that was some Monday night football, wasn't it? Why don't we start with what we know? And I hope that as we move through this whole process, I, always stop with what we know at a given moment. Here's what we know. The former president of the United States destroyed at least some government documents and stole at least some government documents. How do we know that? Tangible, physical, irrefutable evidence. We know that that in and of itself is a crime. What we don't know at this point is what level crime it is. That will depend on the subject matter and the contents of those documents and if they speak to illegal activity. So it could ramp up, but that first step seems pretty firmly established. A crime was committed. So why did the FBI conduct this search? Because it had no choice. So let's talk about what this isn't. It is not a witch hunt. It is not a hoax. It is not fake news. It's none of those things. And understand this distinction. It is not politically motivated. Now, don't get me wrong. Obviously, its political impact is enormous. And this could go either way, and I could probably even make you a case that given the nature of his crazies and their just complete blindness to his wrongdoing, I could make a case that this might end up being the best political thing that ever happened to Donald Trump. So understand the distinction. I'm not saying it doesn't have ginormous political impact. I'm saying it was not politically motivated. It was motivated by a desire to follow the law. There is overwhelming probable cause that a crime, some level crime, was committed. Let me remind you that a federal judge had to sign off on this. And let me remind you as a practical matter, because we always say things are unprecedented. This really is. So the bar that had to be cleared here to obtain that warrant was set incredibly high. So now we have to see where we go from here and what those documents reveal. There is the Presidential Records Act, and it says that if you're convicted of mishandling government documents, that one of the consequences is you are disqualified from holding public office in the future. Now, admittedly, that will come under constitutional scrutiny. That's going to be challenged. I don't know if that will hold up, but that's one of the possible consequences here. And let me ask you this, Kevin McCarthy. When you blatantly use the word revenge, what are you talking about? Revenge on who? Revenge for doing what? It would have been a total abdication if DOJ had not done what it did. Revenge, and it's a dog whistle. Revenge on who? For what? And the hue and the cry, I just can't believe that they stormed into a man's house. What are you telling me? That if you steal documents, that as long as you store them in your house, it's ollie oxen free, that's the safest place that you could store them? I don't think so. But I go back to the words of General Milley in the draft letter of resignation that he was going to submit as chairman of the Joint Chiefs back in June of 2020. He wrote, Mr. Trump, you are doing my country irreparable harm. Now, you want to call him not a patriot? And he also said you are politicizing the military of the United States. You want to talk about people who are guilty of politicizing these things? Look in the mirror, Kevin McCarthy, for sure. I want to mention this briefly. I was really moved because I'd never realized this before. I was very moved by the response of women who were girls and young women during the height of Olivia Newton-John's career. I had never before realized what a positive impact she had on them at a time when girls and women's voices were often unheard. So all respect there. On the news side, I want to leave you with this question. What kind of idiot species plays Russian roulette with a nuclear power plant? Moving to sports, evidence that a day 2 story can be way different than a day 1 story. Let's back up. It was disclosed that last week in a meeting room with players that longtime OU assistant football coach Cale Gundy decided he was going to, because the player apparently wasn't paying attention, so he picks up the player's iPad, he starts reading off it, and he's just reading aloud, and he runs over a word that he says was shameful. Well, it was indeed. We now know that it was not only a racial term, it was the racial term. Now, initially, Gundy said that it was inadvertent and accidental, and he only did it once. Turns out that wasn't the case. Now, he tendered his resignation as a matter of integrity, but this was cleared up a little more yesterday by OU head coach Brent Venables, who says, nah, it wasn't one time. He did it multiple times, and as sad as this is, we have to accept his resignation. His resigning is the right thing to do. We cannot have that in our program. I am duty bound to protect my players. So there's a situation where the day 2 story was markedly different than the day 1 story. All right, so again, my pledge to you is that we're going to go with what we know, but we know what we know at a given moment. Right now, we know that there is overwhelming probable cause that a crime was committed with respect to mishandling government documents. And it's not a trifling matter. I'm asking everybody to stay in their shoes right now. Again, let me clarify. Of course, it's going to have enormous political impact and implications, but you cannot make the claim, credibly, that it was politically motivated. Have a good Tuesday. We're Radically Rational.